Welcome to the March 3rd, 2022 Helm Developer Call. Just one quick announcement today, which is, hey, 3.8.1 coming out March 9th. Triage items and get them in that milestone now, if possible. Any other announcements before we jump into discussion topics? All righty. Mark, you had a few topics. Should we start with a size labeler? Say that 3 times fast, and GitHub Actions.
It was postponed from last week because I need Farina and he is not here. So let's table it. If he shows up, great. If he doesn't, we'll postpone.
I think he might be out this week, so we'll put that to next week. Right. Okay, and then you also had a Helm map cube APIs to discuss.
Yeah, so I brought this up since Martin is here. I just it's always easier in person than on an issue. But I'm not sure if anybody knows. So the situation is that Martin wrote this really great plugin that automatically updates the versions of manifests. And in the next Kubernetes release that I'm upgrading my clusters, as I made Martin aware, the version changes, but also the content. And Farina said maybe the 3-way merge may cause issues. I have no idea. I'm not familiar with that logic, so I wanted to bring it up. I'm not sure if Martin is familiar with that logic. If nobody else is, we can also wait till there's other people.
Yeah, Mark. So just a little TLDR in it for other people. So the idea of the plugin or the tool was because of the way Kubernetes deprecated APIs, we started getting caught short in Helm. So what it meant is if you deployed a Helm chart and it contained APIs that suddenly were removed when you updated your cluster, you could no longer do an upgrade of that release. So the idea of it was it would go pull the releases out, or the secret with the different manifest. It would update the manifest to the latest version. So if someone came along and upgraded, then there wouldn't be a clash between what Helm had stored and what's out in the cluster. So what Mark brings up is an interesting idea. Is it possible now that when it changes from the beta versions to API v1, that some of the fields no longer apply, which when we think about now is probably possible and would be allowable, so there'd be no longer backwards compatibility. So we'd have an issue with that. So that then brings us into a broader view of this then. So it then goes from a very simple plugin that helps customers move on to a situation where do we need to use an actual Kubernetes tool? So I think Mark put in, I can't remember what the tool was, Mark.
kubectl convert.
kubectl convert. So do we have to go down that lines? No, you say, well, how do Kubernetes normally do it? And as far as I can tell, when you're operating anyway, Kubernetes just destroys the objects and recreates the objects. So it goes for more a kind of hammer approach anyway when it's creating this object. So it gets over a lot of that problem. So I suppose it's something we need to investigate and see, is this going to trip up people? Because it seems like people are using the plugin and it helps people going along in the plugin. But then as the plugin, then does it need to be redesigned and reevaluated because it's getting bigger than what it was initially set out for? So yeah.
The upgrade to Kubernetes 122 has such a situation. When I tested it with the plugin, I didn't see any impact. So maybe there is none, but maybe it's just the changes in the content are not dramatic enough to make a difference. I don't know. But I'm assuming that if nobody reported anything, because 122 is not even the most recent, so I guess it seems safe for that version of Kubernetes. For future changes, then we can't tell without actually, knowing better the three-way merge logic and if it could trip up on something or.
Well,
Yeah, just one thing, Mark. Oh, sorry.
I wanted to make sure we heard whatever comment or question Joe had before we moved on too far.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
It's okay.
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah. I heard the question was, how does Kubernetes do it? And yeah, that convert tool does delete and recreate. But if you just change the resource, like add a label, add an annotation, the API server will rewrite the SED object with the latest default version, the latest stable default. So if there's a V1, but then there's a V2 beta 1, it'll write the V1.
Yeah, that's correct, Joe.
So
we are looking at more the case of if it tries to take the properties within the object itself, and we'll say we have properties that were previously supported in a previous version of the API, and then it tries to merge with the API server. What happens there? So we don't fully know the consequences of that. So it's a bit more it may be a bit more, there may be a clash somewhere
Right.
where the API server may say, well, you can't send that field down anymore. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Mark, when you tested this and you used the plugin to do the mapping, did you then do an upgrade afterwards to see if?
No, I wasn't. It's difficult for me to do upgrades. What I did was I installed an old version of the object. I mapped it. What did I do? And then I installed an old version. So Helm had the old manifest. Then I mapped it with the map Kube API plugin. It worked. It didn't change the content. It just changed the version. As Martin explained, that's what the plugin does for now. Then I upgraded with the newer version. And it took it, and Helm had the proper content in the manifest. But nothing was removed. So Martin, if you're saying maybe removal is problematic, I didn't test the removal. Well, actually, yeah, there was some fields that no longer existed. They were exploded into multiples. So there was kind of a removal and a addition. To be more precise, if you look at the ingress change in the 122 deprecation thing, you'd see what changes. But that's the test I did. So it wasn't actually with an upgrade.
Yeah, I think that would work because what Joe said there, Kubernetes will create the object when you upgraded your cluster, then it probably fixed everything. The place where it might find a problem is or would it? Yeah, I don't know. I suppose we just need to test the scenarios really and see what happens. And if it's a problem, then we just have to look at what is a better way to get people around this. Because I suppose for all intents and purposes, the plugin is a workaround. Anyway.
To all cards on the table, I think it's for us, for my upgrades, it would be such a simpler solution to use the plugin than to actually have to upgrade things in advance. And so if, for me, there's a big win to using the plugin. I can try to get one of my sysadmins or my team sysadmin to test with an actual upgrade. All that I'll guarantee is that it'll work with 122. I don't know if Buff, unless somebody who knows the code can say, okay, that's safe. We're not there yet to know if it's going to be okay or not. But anyway,
it's-
it's some, I just wanted to bring it up so we are aware.
That's good. It sounds like then the action item for that is, it would be good for perhaps Martin or others who are more familiar with it to test it with 1.23 and like see if we have an issue. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think we've to do something like that, Bridget. All right, we have to work through and see
See what our
see what the
recommendation is.
scenarios on it. Yeah, so I think it'll be down to the community as a whole to look at it, especially people like Mark and whoever else is upgrading to different versions of Kubernetes. It may not come out yet either, because obviously, you know, Kubernetes versions are miles ahead of the real world. So like most clouds are back at whatever, they're probably at 18, 19 now.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, not exactly right, just because 1.20 is already not getting updates. So like 1.21 is the oldest currently being updated version of Kubernetes. So
Yeah, but you know,
by the upstream
there's
Kubernetes.
the real world and there's the actual world, and we're somewhere between those worlds in Kubernetes.
So true.
It sounds to me like a smaller first step could be that, Martin, since you know the three-way merge, to open an issue against that repo that lists the possible scenarios, so that the test could be written to test those scenarios. Would that be bigger and smaller?
Do we use a third-party three-way merge?
No, we're using Kubernetes, but are you talking about putting in some sort of acceptance test on it, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's something. Yeah, maybe Mark, you and I maybe can sync up at some stage, because I know you're the guru of the acceptance test world at this stage.
You know what? But sure.
I'll charm you with a compliment.
All right.
One last thing about the kubectl convert, Martin, would you be comfortable, if time allows, if I tried to have the plugin simply, you know, take a version, run it through the kubectl convert, and then get the output and do the conversion that way?
Yeah, let's sync offline actually, because we don't want to hog all the time here. But yeah,
Okay.
let's sync up on this, Mark. Okay. Thanks
right,
for your
thank
input as well, Joe.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I did want to add one other topic. I wanted to thank Scott and the rest of the team for getting the OCI blog post out. Hey, look at that. Mr. Farina shows up just as I'm saying, I want to thank folks for getting the OCI blog post out. And we did have a colleague of mine actually added a docs question, like a draft PR, to try to clarify some things around OCI in the Helm docs. And so I wanted to encourage folks to take a look at that one and see if you have any familiarity with the way the OCI stuff is implemented, maybe see if his clarity or his attempts at clarifying in the docs are helping or not helping. But yeah, that would be very helpful. And I'm going to toss it back to Mark, who had a question about the size labeler. And get him.
So that's, yeah, thank you, Bridget. So that's really targeted for Farina. I believe you're the only one who tried it. So it's about the GitHub Action size labeler. We want to enable it for Cobra, and I was worried
you can't
that
use
we were
the
going to
action.
screw it.
You can't use the action. You have to use an app instead. So with the GitHub Action, sorry to cut you off, by the way. With the GitHub Action, when it runs, it gets a token from GitHub, which gives its permissions. And that token's permissions is derived from the person who did the pull request, right? So if some outside person did the pull request and their permissions don't let you add or remove labels, it's going to totally fail because you don't have permissions. But if the person who does the pull request has the permissions, then it works. So it works for people with write access, the maintainers of a repository, but it doesn't work for outside contributors. So there is a GitHub app that we switched to, and that's what I would suggest.
So if I may, I I pointed that out. Well, I kind of said, okay, we had issues with Helm doing it, and the guy said, oh yeah, you're right, and he found an issue, and we looked at that, and it seems to say that if you use a different GitHub trigger, it gives you a write token. So I didn't want to argue with him. I said I didn't test it myself.
Yeah, the security issue with that is, since somebody else can go in and modify the stuff in the .github directory, they could actually access that token with write access and then do other things. And so you want to be careful with how those tokens, and think, if somebody else has access to this token with these other permissions, then how else could they use that token in a malicious way? And that's the thing that I didn't want to do with Helm, was give anybody access to a token that gave you permission to do anything, because somebody in a pull request could do something malicious with access to that token and its rights, and think of things that I wouldn't.
Okay, so if I get what you're saying is the trigger would give the right token, and then in the actual pull request, there would be modifications to the GitHub directory that would then use that token to perform some actions, and
Yeah,
we wouldn't catch in advance.
you wouldn't
it'd be
catch
triggered
that
right
in
away.
advance because it's running in somebody else's pull request. And when your CI configuration for that is in the pull request, you can change it on the fly and get access to things. And that's the concern with ever giving those elevated permissions in that way.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification. I will bring it up.
And that's ultimately why I looked for an app instead. I've poked the CNCF to see whether they would host an instance of the app. They've been kind of busy with everything lately, but that's ultimately because there's a bunch of CNCF projects using this app. That's ultimately what I'd like to see, just so a more trusted organization hosts it, and they're potentially interested.
That is useful. Thank you. Okay. In terms of topics, I think we're mostly done. Martin had a question about looking for a maintainer review of a change in map kube APIs. Martin?
Yeah, folks, please. So that plugin that we've been controversially talking about, I'm looking to drop Helm v2 support. So I put it across, and I think there was a common agreement there that it'd be a good idea because we're going to pass our sell-by date on it. And also, the one reason I don't mind keeping Helm v2 support, but my main reason here is when we cut off Helm v2, we cut off it at the Kubernetes API version 1. Prior to 16, 17. So what it means is I can't go and update any newer versions of dependencies. Because of that, I'm restricted. So hence, you know, I'm a good bit behind on some of the module dependencies. So that's another reason to go off. So if one of the maintainers get a bit of time, thanks to Mark, he's reviewed it already, but I'd like another set of eyes on it. It'd be great if you could jump in. And if you have any questions, just ask me. Okay, thank you.
All right, wonderful, thank you. And then just to wrap up here, we're looking for volunteers for next week. We need triage for the week, and we need a moderator and notes for the call next week. So who, if possible, can participate in that? Mark is raising his hand. What would you like to do, Mark?
I can moderate if nobody else wants to.
All right, wonderful. And it looks like Dr. Butcher can do notes. I know that we've leaned on Joe a lot to do triage for the last few weeks, but since he can't do it this week, if we don't find somebody during this call, we'll need to definitely mention on the maintainer chat that needs to happen. Okay.
I'm gonna call. I want to also throw out a quick thanks to, even though he's not here, Matt Fisher. He's always in there commenting and helping people on issues.
Big thank you to Matt Fisher.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you again so much, folks. And we will see you at the same bat time, same bat channel next week. Bye.